Greetings and welcome back to the channel. You're watching Unbiased Magic Reviews, the place you come to for honest and unfiltered magic reviews. I want to thank you guys for all the comments and all the private emails you guys sent me regarding my last magic review. It seems like it was very helpful to most of you. So moving ahead, I have another review for you guys today from another magician from the United Kingdom, and that is Benjamin Earl, a name you should probably be familiar with because he's probably the most innovative magician coming out of the United Kingdom right now. Now today I'm taking a look at a project of his that's called Real Coin Magic. Now this came out a couple of years ago, and before you squawk, you could still pick this up from Vanishing Ink Magic for $35. Now, I know a lot of you sometimes complain that I review stuff that's not the most new effect, and the reason for that is because I've experienced using it. I buy stuff, I road test it, and then, sometimes I go back to it again and again and again. Just like this project, I've used various pieces from this over the last 4 years, so many times that I've lost count, and that makes it a project that I think is worth reviewing because I've gotten so much use out of it. I think you will too. So when I bought this, I actually got the DVD, but I think you can actually get a digital download now. You're going to get over an hour of video instruction where you're going to watch Benjamin Earl basically perform 4 coin effects. He goes over a couple of switches, a couple of vanishes, and that's pretty much what you can expect here. It's actually pretty long for what you get, and I think it's because Benjamin Earl spends a lot of time going over psychology, timing, tempo, rephrasing the effect, building up the effect to something really impossible and very magical. And I think the main reason for that, just as Benjamin Earl points out in his book, This Is Not a Box, he points out that the inherent problem with magic is that it's hard for the spectator to really get into it because by its very nature, it's not relatable. A lot of times what you're showing them, it's not something that they're going to be interested in. And so to rephrase the whole thing, to draw them in and to actually generate that interest requires you to really actually approach it from a different angle, which is what's really nice. Now, speaking about his book, This Is Not a Box, it also came out around the same time. And if you did get that, there's actually 2 effects from this project that are in that book. And unfortunately, for those people that can't get that, there were some really good things in that book that I think makes it really worth picking up because I don't think the book is available anymore. But I'm going to go over one pattern line that I found extremely useful from that book. I'm just going to go over that briefly for you guys for the benefit of the doubt. Those of you that watch my reviews, you get the benefit of that. Because I found it just so helpful and useful over the last couple of years. So let's get into what you can expect here. I'm going to go over some basic questions, give you an idea of what each of these effects looks like, and then give you my rating. As you can see, I have rated this highly favorable, and I really do recommend this to you guys, especially just because out of all the usefulness I've gotten out of this. So some basic questions for you is how difficult is this material? Well, I'd say it's intermediate level. None of the sleights are extremely difficult, but it is going to require a little bit of practice because none of this stuff is self-working, but none of this stuff is really incredibly difficult. I found the most difficult thing maybe is the timing. That's what's going to really require you practice, so that way you can get the timing down, so that way it's extremely smooth, so the spectator never even detects or suspects that anything has even happened. There are no gimmicks or gaffes in play unless you want to use a gimmick coin yourself. Some people might find it useful to use something like a TUC quarter so you can actually do something else afterwards, but that's up to you. You can use all borrowed coins, and I found that the coins that worked the best were either a quarter or a nickel here in the United States, so you could use whatever coins you want. You can borrow them from the spectator, and as I mentioned, that there's no gimmicks or gaffes. And I think that anyone who's into impromptu magic is really going to like this because all of this stuff is completely impromptu, and you may find that one or more of these pieces are a good way to introduce your magic when you start a set because it feels completely off the cuff. Now, Benjamin Earl himself describes this collection of effects as very simple effects, and that's because each of these effects is basically just a one-phase effect, but the way that he's reframed it and built it up, it really does feel like a lot more than what it is, because the conditions seem absolutely impossible. The clarity is so clear that the spectator is going to do a double take when the effect actually occurs. So let's take a look at these. So the first effect is called primary movement, and in this effect, you take a coin in your left hand, you close it up, you turn your hand over, you put your other hand out flat, and you have the spectator hold on to each wrist. And if you have multiple spectators, you're gonna have multiple people involved in this. And then at the right moment, you just go like this. And it says it all. You know, what's really nice about it is that the structure of the routine, it says it all. The person's gonna immediately realize you're no longer holding a coin in your left hand. And then when you slowly turn your hands over, you can show them that now you have the coin in your right hand. And the pattern line that came out of his book, This Is Not a Box, he did have this effect in that book. And I thought that it was just genius, his pattern line for this, which is when you're in this position, you tell the spectator that silence is where the truth is. It speaks louder than any words can. Watch carefully. And then you do the effect. And I've used that when I've done the effect countless times. And it really draws the person in, because in that moment they realize, wow, something is about to happen when you tell them silence is where the truth is. It's kind of like, I really love that pattern line from the book, which is why I share it with you guys, and I've used it myself countless times. And so I just really like this effect a lot because of the reactions I've got were amazing. You're going to actually have a problem because your spectators are going to want to see it again. And I would recommend you don't repeat it. Instead, you move on and do something totally different, because those are the reactions I've gotten, is that people are going to be like, no, that's not possible. Let me see that again. And so that's why I recommend that after that, you just move on and go into something else. But the beauty of it is you're going to really draw them in with this effect. And this was pretty much my favorite effect here on this project, other than the copper silver transpo, which we're going to get to in a minute. So the next effect after that is called SDS Vanish, and this is a very simple vanish of a coin, but the way that it's choreographed is for, as I mentioned, utter clarity. You have a coin in your left hand, and all you do is you pick it up with your right hand. You ask the spectator to hold out their hand, and you literally, right in front of them, you take the coin and you dematerialize it to nothing, and it's just gone. So it's a beautiful vanish, and when you practice it, you're gonna think this isn't gonna fool anyone, because it's a very psychological vanish. But I can assure you that it does work. I've had good success with it myself, but it will take a little bit of practice, because your timing has to be really good. Because what happens is that the brain of the spectator fills in the empty space that their eye doesn't see. That's the reason why this works. And the psychology is just very powerful. It's an excellent vanish. And if you're looking for a very easy vanish, but very convincing, this is something you may want to take a look at. It's not difficult. It's the timing that's difficult. The actual move is like stupid simple, but to do it at the right moment is what takes a little bit of practice. And I think all the tips and finesses that Benjamin Earl gives you in terms of, you know, your head movement, your body movement, all of that really does help with the misdirection. And this whole project, I would tell you guys, is really a very advanced level lesson in misdirection and just your own body language with the spectator. You're going to learn so much in this project, even that you can apply to other magic, that I have to tell you guys up front that it's very educational in that way, because Benjamin Earl really has thought about this a little bit bigger scope than what you would imagine. So it's not just the simple effect here, it's the whole concept of what you're presenting to the spectator, the clarity of it. He goes over some tips that he says it took him many years to figure out, but some of those tips may seem really basic to you, but when you think about it, it really does make sense. All right, so the next effect is called Metal Switch, and this was my second favorite effect here on this project. It's a basic 2-coin transposition, like a copper silver transposition, and you could use any coins you want. Personally, I found in my own trial and error that I really liked the 20 centimeter a French coin and a quarter because they're literally exactly the same size. Or you can also use a half penny, half English penny, because it's also almost the same size as a quarter. If you're going to use American currency, I think that that will work really nicely. But you can use any coins because this is, again, totally impromptu, no gaffes. And it's a very basic transposition. It's just one phase. You take out a coin and you show it to the spectator, and you tell the spectator that you have another coin for them. You go in your pocket, you take out a second coin that's a contrasting coin. You ask them to hold their hand. You tell them to hold on to this one tight. You give it to them, and you tell them that you're going to try to get that coin out of their hand. You're concentrating, you know, and whatnot. And then the best part about this is the spectator doesn't realize exactly when the magic occurs. But then suddenly, when they least expect it, you're like, yeah, there you go. And you tell them. Now, the difficult part wasn't just getting your coin out of your hand, but it was actually putting my coin in your hand. So it's like kind of like a nice play on words. You open your hand, you have their coin, they open their hand, then they have your coin. The nice thing about this is that the dirty work occurs in moments when the spectator least expects it, especially because they feel like the effect is already over and it's really not. So really great psychology there. I really liked it a lot. This was definitely my second favorite piece on this project, and the second effect that I've used the most frequent out of this whole project. I think that you guys are really going to like it a lot. Afterwards, Ben Earl goes over two simple switches, and these are two excellent alternatives to a shuttle pass. If you don't like doing a shuttle pass, you can pick up one of these moves instead. The first one is called the hips switch, which is hidden in plain sight switch, which is an excellent psychological switch, really, and it's really like a shuttle pass, and it's going to just blow over your spectators. So something you can incorporate into the coin magic you already do. And then the second switch is called the no touch switch. Again, it's very simple, but it's off the cuff, and no one's even going to suspect what you did. Finally, the last effect here on this project is called the Pocket Time Machine, and this effect was also published in his book, This Is Not a Box, and this is an effect where you're basically taking the spectator back in time. You have the spectator, you show the spectator you have nothing in your hand, you close your hand, you have them hold your wrist, then you tell them that you want them to remember this moment. You open your hand, you show them there's nothing there. You now take a coin out of your pocket and you put it in your hand. Again, you close your hand, you have them hold your wrist, and then in continuation, you tell them, remember I told you to remember this moment. You open your hand, there's nothing in your hand, the coin is back in your pocket. Now, it's really a nice little effect, but I didn't like the ditch involved with it. That was the one thing I didn't like. I thought the ditch was very obvious, and so I've actually done something a little bit different. I've replaced this type of effect with something else that I do, and if you are interested, you can message me about that. But I think that this was the weakest piece on this project, although you may like it. I'm going to show you guys what I like to do instead, and that's because I like to have a coin signed. Like, I like to take out a coin and have it signed, or I like to borrow a coin, like a quarter from somebody, have it signed. And then what I do instead is I tell them we're going to do a simple observation test. I tell them that, do you think the coin is heads or tails? And then when I open my hand, the coin's gone, but now it's in my pocket, and it's a signed coin. And the reason why I like my version better is just because it's very clear. It's like undetectable. I use a completely, totally different method. In fact, let me show you guys what it looks like. And here's something pretty neat. You can ask for a quarter. When they don't have one, most people don't have change in their pocket. You can just reach into your pocket and say, oh, you know what, I got a quarter. You can have them sign the quarter. They put their signature on the quarter. You can say, look, this is an observation test. I'm going to ask you in a moment if the quarter is heads or tails. So take a good look at it. See the quarter? Now I'm just going to squeeze it like this. Is it heads or tails? They're going to say heads or whatever. You look inside, say, yeah, it is heads. Now, imagine if I could take time backwards, go back in time, back to when I wasn't even holding on to a quarter, back to when I actually asked you for a quarter, you didn't have a quarter, back to when I actually reached into my pocket here and I actually pulled out a quarter. Here's the weirdest thing though, it's got your signature on it. All right, so you guys took a look at my idea, and that is my original idea. If you're interested, you can send me an email. I will share with you my idea. It's not a big deal. You may like it or you may not like it, but that's why you watch these magic reviews, so you can get different ideas and so you can get a really good idea of what you might be buying. So getting into the rating very basically here. So I rated this project as 4.42 out of 5, highly favorable, and here is a quick rundown. For originality, I rated this as 4 out of 5, and the reason is because Benjamin Earl has really restructured all of these very basic effects. He's introduced new moves, new ideas, new psychology, new timing, very original overall, and you're not going to find any other project that's similar to this. For creativity, again, I give him 5 out of 5. Very creative, very thoughtful, especially just the way that he's presenting this as something different. It's a very, very creative project overall. I think that you're really going to like that about it. The teaching of this I would rate as 5 out of 5. He spends literally over 20 minutes on the first effect. And the other effects he does, he spends like over 15 minutes on each one. So you really are going to learn everything in and out. You're going to learn all of the details. And I really like how he gives you alternative ideas also with each effect. For practicality, it has to be 5 out of 5 because this is completely impromptu, off the cuff, anytime, anywhere. For tips and finesses, I give him 4.5 out of 5. And the reason is because he gives you loads of tips, ideas, finesses. I really like how he tells you, like, hold this moment for a second longer, because that will really register in the spectator's mind the clarity. He really clarifies each of these effects. So for tips and finesses, I give him 4.5 out of 5. In terms of price, I would rate it as 3 out of 5 because it is a little bit more on the expensive side for what you're getting, although I do think it's very well worth it, and I think you're really going to like it a lot. But for that reason, I would rate it as 3 out of 5 for price, giving this an overall rating of 4.42 out of 5. Highly favorable. I would highly recommend it to you guys because some of the material on here is stuff that I'm still using 4 years later, which tells you why I recommend it to you guys. You guys know that I only recommend stuff that I use myself all the time. So that's really a big rundown of what you guys can expect here. As usual, if you have any questions or comments about this project or anything else I review, just leave me a comment below. And this has been another Unbiased Magic Review. I'll see you guys on the next one.